Some moments are so impactful they can split your life in two. There's before it happens and everything that comes after. For skydivers Lucch and Ben, that moment came in mid-air over Byron Bay when a routine jump went catastrophically wrong. A shocking collision in freefall obliterated Ben's leg and knocked Lucch unconscious, sending him cartwheeling thousands of feet toward the ground and almost certain death. Miraculously, Lucch survived, but what followed was the hardest chapter of Ben's life, as he reckoned not only with the brutal road to physical recovery, but also the trauma, guilt, and identity loss that came with it. They've emerged from this life-altering event with a remarkable story to tell and an important mental health message to share with the world. It's all captured in their new documentary called Impact, which is yet to be publicly released. This is Mark Lucchiari and Ben Lucock.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Credit Union SA and Bernie Lewis Home Loans, two South Australian businesses that believe in the value of raising mental health awareness, working together to help save lives. Improving the mental health of our communities is a complex challenge that calls for speaking up and taking action, and sharing lived experience stories is a major part of making positive change. We couldn't bring you these podcasts without their support. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself.
So I watched your documentary Impact, obviously a double meaning, and it did absolutely blow me away. I know that's a cliche thing that people say, but it genuinely did. It was totally gripping. It was inspiring. It was tear-jerking. It was extremely authentic. It did a fantastic job of really entertaining storytelling, edge of your seat stuff coupled with really meaningful discussion and delivered in such a genuine way and also just beautifully put together. And I watched it thinking this is the real deal, and why haven't I seen this on Netflix or Stan or Amazon Prime? It should have millions of views and everyone should be talking about it, is what I thought.
Thanks for the kind words, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, mate.
Put that in a review.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, so much effort's gone into that, and the vision that you had, because when you're skydiving, you've got the webcam on your head, and so you have all the footage of this catastrophe, and as horrifying as that must have been to rewatch, and as horrifying as it is to watch as a viewer, being able to show what happened and describe what everyone was thinking in those moments, and then you're seeing it happen, you're seeing Lucch, you cartwheeling, spinning out of control. You're hearing about how people were trying to get over to you, trying to do something to save you, but ultimately it's pretty hard when you're already free falling through the sky and you're that far away from your mate, and the ground's getting closer, and you're just thinking, like, how does this possibly end with both of these guys being here telling the story? So anyway, can you guys just take us through that dive?
It was the end of the day. And that's just, like Lukey explains in the documentary, that's the cream on the pie. Like, if you've had an excellent day jumping and the weather's played the game, you know, we jump on the coast quite often here in Australia, and these high-pressure systems come in, and as soon as the heat builds on the Australian outback land, we get these trade winds kind of come in and generate, and the day can get blown out by lunchtime. And if you get those magic days where the ocean's just glassed out, the sun's going down behind the mountains, it's a magic jump to get on the last jump of the day. And for me, I think it was my 9th jump of the day. Like, I'd been going pretty hard. I think Lucci had done a few, and it was our friends, Mad Dog's 1000th jump. Was it 1000th, Lucci?
Yeah, yep.
So, you know, a bit of a milestone in skydiving for him. And we were all there. Like, it was post-COVID, we're all getting back together. Like, you know, skydiving has a really good fraternity kind of amongst, you know, the camaraderie and everything. And it was just a feel-good jump until disaster struck, you know, till I just, you know, I had like a brain malfunction, I think is the best way I can kind of describe what I did. Like, it hurts the pride, hurts the ego. It's still to this day hard to fathom how I made such a stupid mistake. And that's probably just something I'll take to the grave, you know, like, you know, I kind of learned to live with it, but it still hurts the ego to think about it. And I was just lucky that Lucci survived.
What was the mistake, Ben?
So basically, I was the last diver on the formation, and as you can imagine, like, those planes are pretty tightly packed, and they're also a very lightweight machine. and you put your 17 skydivers in there, you know, you're kind of getting over that 1,000 kilos mark. The weight shift can have a dramatic effect to the plane. So as everyone's leaving, if everyone is planned to leave that plane at the same time, you have to kind of structure like the weight shift, and obviously not 17 people can fit out of a tiny door that can, you know, generally probably cram 3 people wide in it. So being the last person out on the formation, I'm way up next to the pilot. So at the front of the plane, right in the nose. There's a few of us up there. We're trying to work as a counterbalance for everyone kind of at the back of the plane. And we're also pretty jammed in there. So as they leave, I'm kind of like managing the weight shift from the plane, which is bouncing around in the sky. And I'm also running down the plane and then trying to get out the door. So quite often you can be exiting a plane, you know, 15 seconds, maybe even 20 seconds after other people have jumped. And they're in free fall. They're in, you know, human weight free fall. They've covered like a couple of thousand feet. So you can jump out of a plane and people are just dots in the sky that you're trying to catch. So you essentially want to go into a dive and you want to try and catch that group by going faster than what they're traveling. And, you know, it's happened to us thousands of times. Like you've jumped out and you're trying to catch them and you're like slowly making your way down there. And as you know, skydiving has a time limit because we got gravity, you know, working against us and the Earth's surface. So you can get down there and all of a sudden your altimeter says it's time to leave your friends. You got to deploy a parachute and you miss the whole dive. So we get this hungry factor that you're like, I've got to get there soon so I can at least high five someone and be a part of this group. And that was me. I was really hungry. I was jumping down and as I was kind of traveling towards them, it wasn't until I was too late that I realized I was going a lot faster than them, a lot faster. And, you know, you can try and make yourself big in the sky. Skydiving's all about surface area and presentation to the wind. And I was about to start to hit the brakes and I realized there's no point. If I just hit the brakes, I'm going to become unsteady. The same as if you're in the car and you jam on the brakes, the car likes to protest and move around. Our body's the same. Like if you hit the brakes softly, you can kind of stay on the same trajectory. You jam on the brakes, you get a bit wobbly. So my best option at the time, like you're thinking, you know, 1,000th of a second, I was like, I'm just going to fly through them and try and stay safe. Like it's a horrible thing to do. I've never had to do it before, but it was just like, that's my decision. And as I tried to fly through the formation, I've caught Lucchi. Whether I didn't see him because he had his camo gear on that day or whether I just misjudged my timing, like I've just collected Lucchi. Right with my right knee, inside of my right knee, went into the back of Lucchi's head with a full face. He had a full face helmet on. So,
Lucchi, what do you remember from that impact moment?
Yeah, I actually do remember it. It was like if you watch the video footage, you know, when I hit the ground, I'm recalling the incident of the actual collision. Later on, like it was all a bit of a blur kind of after it. And, you know, even now it's kind of nearly like dreamlike. I kind of mentioned that in the doco. It's like a dreamlike thing. But yeah, I remember the jump, like Benny was described, you know, epic sunset jump of the day. And I dove out. I was the first diver of the second group. As Benny was saying, we split it up in the plane. And I dove down to my slot and kind of got there and looked across at the leader of our group because we have a leader that leads the jump. And looked at Mad Dog and next thing you know, I just felt that hit. And then it just from there it really went to that. I wasn't sure whether I was dreaming or whether I was really skydiving. I kind of, those dreams where you're trying to, I kind of explain it, you're trying to scream out, but you can't scream out, or you're trying to do an action in your dream.
Like a sleep paralysis sort of thing.
Yeah, like run really fast, but you can't run or whatever it was. In my dream, it felt like I knew I was skydiving. I was kind of on my back and I couldn't roll over, and I was just trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And, you see the footage, looks like I'm trying to turn my camera on. I'm grabbing my head. I'm reaching around. I've really got no idea what's going on at all.
No, the footage was making me feel sick. And you keep thinking that this is a reenactment because usually they don't have the actual footage. And then I was reminding myself, like, no, this is actually what was the first person view of this fall, which is just shocking to watch. Did you actually go unconscious? You don't really know.
Yeah, look, I think I was knocked out completely cold for only like a few seconds, really. I think for in the footage you see I'm on my back for maybe, I think about 5 seconds, and then I flip over onto my belly, and that's where I'm still conscious, but I can't really remember much of it. I can't make much sense of it. Like I said, it was kind of like it was a dream. I still, yeah, I was obviously very confused. Being unconscious would have only been a few seconds. And I always say to Benny, like, I had a pretty big fight career, 43 fights, and was knocked down a few times, but never been knocked out cold in my life or anything. So I said to Benny, I said, "You can come around and grab the belts, mate. They're yours. You got me."
Yeah, I was gonna mention that, Lucch. You're a Muay Thai fighter who's taken quite a few knocks in your time, but nothing that quite compared to that one. The force velocity on that one was pretty extreme.
For sure. There was probably, we don't know the speed difference, but it was probably well over 100k difference between me and Benny. And a knee to the back of the head at over 100k an hour is not good. Lucky. I've kind of spent a whole life of getting punched in the head, and a whole life of training as well. There was a lot of guys and girls on that jump that are a lot smaller than I am, a lot smaller build, and probably haven't spent a lifetime of copping hits to the head. And who knows what would have happened if it hit someone else.
So maybe those traps saved you.
Yeah, that's it, mate.
T-Bone stacks and barbell plates.
I think if you
always do your shrugs.
Yeah, exactly. I think you are one of the boys slow-moed the footage and did a screenshot, and my neck's about 3 foot long. Looks like my head's about this far away from my shoulders. So definitely stretched the old neck out. Gave me a couple of inches in height.
And Ben, you're watching a lot of this happen. After that collision, you can still see Lucchi for a while. Can you just talk about that moment when you're realizing what's happened and looking at what's still happening?
Yeah, that was it was pretty soul destroying. That moment, like my leg obviously just shattered, and it just turned into a cricket ball in a sock. It was just kind of a streamer in the wind. I was still traveling a couple 100 k's an hour with this leg, and that was my initial thing to kind of pull that in. I roll onto my back and go into like a turtle, because it's like a turtle on their back, and I pulled my knee in, kind of like secure my leg. But yeah, it was very short-lived that time, because I was like, I've hit someone, where are they? And as soon as I rolled over and looked in the direction I've come from, Lucchi was right there in the middle of my vision. I didn't have to look very long for him. And it was just that, I've skydived for years, when I'd had this incident. And I was also coached, and I've done a lot of things. So to see someone cartwheeling across the sky the way he was, like, I knew instantly he was, unresponsive. That was a no input position. That was the same as if you'd thrown a rag doll out of a plane. So I was like, I've got to get to Lucchi. I've got to get over there. I don't even think I knew it was him. I was like, I've just got to get to that person and help, because I've stuffed up big time here. So unfortunately, I just wasn't able to try and match his trajectory in the sky and try and move. You can move horizontally in the sky, even without these wingsuits and stuff that we use these days. You can move, obviously not as efficient as them, but you can move. As you're traveling down, you can actually move across the sky. So you can link up with people, but just the way he was moving, I was unable to get there. So it's pretty disheartening, And as you see in the footage, there's a couple of guys that are able-bodied, and they were trying to get to Lucch as well to try and help him, and it just so happened they couldn't get there either.
Did it feel like you were in the air for a long time while this was happening?
I don't think it specifically it didn't feel like it was a long time. Sitting under canopy went for a long time, because after I realised I was not gaining any ground on Lucch, and I could see other people heading towards his direction, like, I figured the safest thing for me to do was deploy my parachute, because then I can just assess everything, and I kind of knew everyone had gone past me at that stage. There's no one above me. So I've deployed my parachute, and I don't know exactly, but I think I was around that kind of like 8,000 or 9,000 feet mark, which, you know, is like kind of a couple of Ks really. And if you think about looking down the street a couple of Ks and trying to spot someone, it's a long way. So as I could initially see Lucci when I was still on the canopy and the two people trying to fly to him, but as he kind of went down, and then you've got all the terrain, you've got the highway, you've got all the forest, the ocean, everything, they just blended into the backdrop. So once they blend in, you're reliant on opening of the canopy because they're generally like more of a color, and you get that contrast on the background. And I seen the other guys open, but I never seen Lucci's canopy open. You know, he's opened it. What did your computer end up saying? About 600 or 700 feet, maybe lower, 400 feet?
Yeah, I think 136 feet it started flying forwards, but it deployed at like 600 feet, I think it was, started deploying.
Yeah.
So
yeah. For anyone kind of curious, we're normally deploying a parachute, like actively ourselves, at around that 3,500 feet. And Lucci's came out at 600 feet. So he's really close to the ground. He's not where you want to be, and you know he's a long way away from me, so I can't see him. And that's the point where I figured no canopy has been deployed, and he's gone in full speed. He's hit the ground. So I was a bit of a mess at that point. So, and that's where I kind of chat about it in the documentary. I didn't really know how to face the music at that point, and as I was saying before, we skydive on the coast, and that jump was majority of our jumps on the coast, and that jump was at Byron Bay, pretty famous part in Australia. And from where I was, I can fly my canopy out to the ocean, and that was a pretty strong thought process at that point in time. I was like, well, I don't know if I can face the music. Just like I've killed someone, so I'm just going to fly my parachute out. I don't feel like I'm worthy of life at this point in time. The thought process that followed that, I'm not 100% sure. I feel like I just kind of went into this weird state, but something obviously drew me back because I landed at the drop zone safely. And luckily, Lucci, I found out not long after I landed that Lucci was alive, but a bit battered up.
So literally just go through that last minute or so when the ground's hurtling towards you and you're trying to do something.
yeah, so like as I was saying before, I was like it was very dreamlike, but as I was kind of getting closer to the ground, I was getting a bit more awareness. And you know, when I was going through about 1,000 feet, you know, this is happening obviously very, very quickly, and it felt like, to me, it actually felt quite long. You know, it was milliseconds, but this thought period that I'm about to explain, like, felt quite long. Like, I was very close to the ground. I'd kind of realized that something had happened. I couldn't really remember what had happened, but I could see that I had one of my emergency handles in my hand. You can see in the footage, I'm passing it back and forth in front of me, trying to figure out what's going on. And as I'm doing this, I'm kind of like, well, I'm about to go in, which in skydiving terminology is I'm about to die, you know. And I'm just thinking, what's happened? Why am I going in? Obviously, my emergency procedures mustn't have worked. And I kind of even thought about maybe like trying to reach up. And as all this all happening, I'm just like, this is it, you know. And I kind of thought about my family and my beautiful wife and my two boys. And, you know, I kind of accepted that this is it. And I'm about to go in, I'm about to die. And I'm pretty content with my life. I kind of accepted a death, I suppose, at that stage there. It was like, here we go. Let's see what happens next. Yeah, then all of a sudden, I'm still there. This beautiful white canopy opened up and I'm laying on the ground, watching one of my mates land next to me really hard. I kind of still hadn't even clicked that I was injured or what happened. I seen my mate land really hard next to me and I yell out to him. I'm like, "You all right, mate? You all right?"
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I love that. How you were checking on him.
Yeah. He comes running over. He's like, "You all right?" I'm like, "Oh man, what the fuck happened?"
Yeah.
And but it was a pretty look. Like I said, you know, I was as close as it comes to dying. You know, multiple things. You know, even the initial hit. You know, that probably should have killed me. And then, yeah, I was literally, I don't know, it would have been under half a second from hitting the ground if my canopy didn't open. So yeah, you could say it was pretty much as close as a human can get to dying. So that's a pretty kind of stark realization. The aftermath that comes after a near-death experience, the thought processes that come along with it were very intriguing. It's not the first time that I've, have had a very close near-death experience. There was a few in a row, quite close together. But yeah, it's a very intriguing thought pattern that happens after it.
What's been the most distinct takeaway from that thought pattern, from those near-death experiences that's changed your life?
For me, it just made me kind of start realizing, like, what am I still here for? Like, what's important to me in life? A lot of people said to me, "Oh, you're going to stop skydiving. You're going to stop doing all these activities that you're doing that have caused these near-death experiences." And I had the total opposite kind of thought pattern to that. It was like, hell no, like, this is what makes me happy. This is what I do. This is why I'm here. Like, if I was going to give up on life and just live a very comfortable life in a bubble, I might as well have gone in. But one of the biggest things that just made me realize is what is important to me in life. And we chase all these highs of jumping off things or out of things or climbing things or surfing big waves, whatever it is. But it really made me realize one of the most important things in life is what my purpose is, and I know that now, is like to help out and give back and make my impact on the world. Excuse the pun.
How'd your family feel about the fact that you're still the kind of guy who wants to jump out of planes?
Yeah, well, if you'd seen me stuck at home injured or sitting on the couch, that's a way worse fate for my family than me going in, that's for sure.
My wife says the same, eh?
Yeah, mate, it's just they know that's who I am. That makes me who I am. And without that, I am not the person I am. So they're all good for it. Obviously, there's limits to everything, but we're putting our lives at risk willy-nilly with what we do. We're very calculated with everything we do, like base jumping and climbing and all that stuff is super calculated. A lot of people think we have a death wish, but it's not. We have a life wish. We want to live. Like, we want to live more than the average person, and that's what a near-death experiences can show you, is what life is really about,
Yeah, that's well explained, and I think it's important for people who don't get it. Like, I've only exited a plane through the door while it was on the ground before, and I've got no wish to do it while it's in midair. But I think it's one of those things. It's like another guy I've had on this show who got his leg taken by a great white, who's an avid surfer, and you hear the same story of he went surfing again, and he still surfs these days with a bionic leg. And it comes down to people are who they are, and that the risk and the potential for death and injury is outweighed by what it means to you and your identity. And I think it's difficult to understand for people who don't do it, but it seems to be a consistent theme for people who are into those kinds of sports or adrenaline junkies, that is just part of who you are and what makes you who you are.
Yeah, 100%. We're here to live life, not just to survive and get through it. And like, the thing that scares me most in this world is not dying. It's actually not living. That's what I'm scared of, is not, getting to that stage when it is my time and going, shit, I didn't give it 100%. I was scared of trying new things, or I didn't do this because of that and whatnot. That's what, that would be me done, ruin me.
But then you've both got to balance that need with having a lot to lose.
Yeah. 100%. Ben and I are both family man. But like I said, what is life if you're just trying to survive, just make it to as old as you can get without trying new things or experiencing what life has to offer?
My turn, you charge the castle for that hard for so long. Eventually something's going to happen. It's my turn to chill out. And I was okay with that. And even though a lot of the surgeons and the people that kind of spoke to me said, like, this is a bad injury, you will be paying the piper for the rest of your life with this leg. It won't mend as well as you think it is. I still wasn't that phased. I was like, yeah, that's what the textbooks say. That's all good. I'm doing my own thing, you know. And I had the first 2 surgeries, and, you know, I met a really good surgeon. He did an outstanding job. And then I just got stuck into my physio, and I lived and breathed everything to do with my leg. Every second of the day was focused on that. I had a meal plan. I had supplement plans. If I was resting, it was because I was designed to rest. It was like, right, for this period of 90 minutes, I rest and that's it. And that was purely to recover my knee. Otherwise, I was doing something actively. And I think I just burnt myself into the ground, and emotionally and physically, because my leg actually got worse. Every time I kind of got into these modes, I end up doing more damage. I re-snapped ligaments, trying to rehabilitate them. It just protested against me. That crushed me. That really crushed me. I thought I was kind of pretty strong-willed, but you know, the adversity I faced with that truly broke me to the point where I was pretty happy to start again. I kind of, you know, resonated, you know, with life. Which it sounds strange for such a, you know, it sounds like a horrible injury, and if you watch the footage, it looks gnarly. But in terms of, you know, what other people have gone through, and you know, trauma that results in quadriplegics and all that kind of stuff, what I had was very, very minor. So there was obviously a lot of embarrassment that I was feeling that way. I was like, I couldn't understand. One, I couldn't overcome the accident or the injury. I couldn't progress in my rehabilitation. My mind was going. I was just broken, and it was very embarrassing. It was very hard to talk about. Basically, my wife was the only person that really knew. A lot of my close friends kind of was like, "Oh, you've lost a bit of your spark," but you know, I just know you're going through some stuff, and that was about it in terms of what people knew. But internally, I was. I'd suggested to my partner that I was going to take my life. So it was a weird time. It was hard to kind of grasp.
And it dragged on for a long time too, much longer than you hoped it would.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that thought pattern. There's probably people out there that have gone in and out of depression or had bouts of depression that have lasted like 10 years. So once again, like relative to them, it was pretty short-lived. It was probably only about 6 or 8 months. Probably more like 6 months that I was kind of in a bad headspace. And it's the weird thing is, like, I never kind of gave up on what the goals were. Like, my program still said get up at 5:30 when your alarm goes off and go swim laps at the pool. And that's what I did. Like my day-to-day life didn't change. I still swam laps. I still went to the gym. I still did every rehab exercise. If they suggested 10 hours a week, I did 20 hours a week. I still had a meal plan. I was working part-time. I had an office job. You know, I'd take my little kickstand and go put my leg up on the desk and tap away on the computer a few times a week. But it was only really inside, you know, you get to the end of the day and you're like, is this my life now? And is it worth living? Do I want to do this? And how long do I want to do it for? And, you know, it's this, I think I mentioned in the documentary, and a lot of friends have kind of like acknowledged that thought pattern. It's you go to bed and you're just like, please don't wake up. Please don't wake up the next day. So it's this weird Groundhog Day and the weird train of thought, and it's very embarrassing for you know, someone that holds themselves to a certain standard. It's embarrassing to have these thoughts. So, but coming out of it the other side, I realized I was quite honest about it amongst friends, peers, or just people I ran into. I was probably borderline too honest. You know, I kind of noticed talking about a few things like, obviously a lot of people go through stuff on daily life, whether it's physical trauma, career goals, anything, relationships. You know, me talking about it so openly was allowing them to revisit things that maybe they'd put in an area of their thought patterns that they didn't want to face. So, you know, if anything, I was kind of mindful of being too honest. But, you know, we just kind of decided with these thoughts, maybe we'll share it in this documentary fashion, you know, like, and, you know, all three of us, me, Lucci and Paddy, had, the same idea, which was really handy. We've got all this cool footage. We've got these factors of entertainment. Can we open a spark in there amongst that to generate thoughts, ways to help people kind of process life to a certain degree, Obviously, we're not experts, but we're just trying to create a little spark just to put a thought in people's heads. So that was the whole idea, and hopefully that's how, people it's been perceived.
When me, Benny and Paddy started talking about what we're going to do with this and what message we're trying to get across, and, Benny was going through these struggles. Myself had been affected by suicide. I lost my dad to suicide when I was 5 years old, and I'd suffered some mental health issues over the years, a bit of depression here and there. Paddy had lost 2 brothers to suicide. Paddy's the director, the filmmaker. He'd actually lost 2 brothers to suicide, and that's when it was just like, wow, okay, like Benny said, we've got entertainment, we've got this spark of this story. Let's just get this conversation going and get it out there and share our stories. And hopefully this can help someone. Because, when I grew up and I'd lost my dad from suicide, there's no such thing about speaking about men's mental health or showing that you're vulnerable or that you're struggling. It was kind of, as Benny said, you feel embarrassed about it. I know I did, and I had no one to turn to. And it was like, man, okay, if we can show people that this is, you're not the only one, and hopefully it might save someone's life or help someone or just make someone's life better in any way. That's what we wanted to try and get out of it.
Oh, you've certainly achieved that, guys. That's why we've got to get it out there and get it in front of as many people as possible, because it's powerful stuff. Lucch, what was it like to see Ben going through that when you'd had some experience with it yourself and obviously intimately involved in the situation, being the one who got hit, and to see him drag himself through that depression and be struggling? How are you receiving that as a mate of his?
Yeah, well, so when it first happened, me and Benny weren't, we were acquaintances through skydiving. We weren't real close friends. And then when, we got chatting a few years on, or, it was probably a year or so after it, we really started connecting a bit more. What are we going to do? And yeah, then seeing when Benny kind of, said he was struggling a bit and I'd gone through it myself. When the accident first happened, I knew he would be struggling just because we're very similar. Anyone who's caused an accident, nearly killed someone, they're going to be struggling mentally. So, one of the first things me and my wife and my boys did was just make sure Benny knew that we held no animosity towards him. We held no blame towards him. I think we reached out to each other. I reached out to Benny, I think that day or the next day when I was in hospital, and said, hey, mate, all good, bro. You just worry about healing yourself. Don't worry about me. Like, I forgive you, whatever. I can't remember exact words, but it was like, just you worry about yourself, man. Don't worry about me. I'm all good. So as that kind of kept evolving, this took a couple of years to make this doco, and it wasn't easy. We went through some hard times between me, Benny, and Paddy. We hated each other at stages there. It was a lot of emotions going through, about trying to get this out there. None of us could put each other in it, none of us put ourselves in each other's shoes. You think you try and relate with each other, but I wasn't the one that caused the accident. I was the one that was part of it. I didn't know how he felt. Paddy was trying to make a film for both of us. Paddy had his own, issues as well with his brothers committing suicide. There were so many emotions running around that it nearly didn't happen. But yeah, I'm so glad we stuck through it, and just, we're all better. Us three are both all better for it. And, obviously the result from it was a great film. So it was good times. What did we say, Benny? It was character building.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
And
that text message.
You guys are a lot closer now, or you hate each other now?
Yeah, no, mate. You can't separate us. I think a bit of Benny's DNA is inside my head somewhere there. There's some bone of his in there. But no, mate. I love this guy. I seriously do. I admire Benny, and like I said, I've never held any animosity towards him because of the accident, and I'm just proud of him and myself and Paddy for the story that we've put out there. Especially Benny putting himself out there, saying, "Hey, look, I caused an accident, and here's the story about it." And speaking about mental health, he's so freaking strong and brave, and like I said, I admire him.
Thanks, brother. I love you.
Yeah, mate, you too, mate.
Yeah, I remember that text message. I think it was the next day, sitting in hospital. And it was a very, I still beat myself up to this day. But just to get that text message from Lucch about him and his entire family, that they had no animosity towards me, I just thought it was a very beautiful thing, And like Lucch said, was after the accident we reconnected again, and he's invited me into his home. I've been I'm friends with his wife and his boys. I just thought it was a very beautiful thing. So yeah, power to him.
Ben, can you just talk a bit about the guilt element of all this? Because I think that's interesting. It reminded me of a mate of mine, Nathan Bolton, who served in Afghanistan disarming landmines, and a particularly significant part of his story is it was his job to go and find the landmines, and one night he had 5 commandos behind him and he came within an inch of stepping on one, and later found out that the explosives were under all his mates, not under him. And so if he'd stepped on it, he would have killed all the guys behind him, not himself. And he's suffered a lot with PTSD as well. And because of what he could have done to his mates, not to himself. And that struck me that was somewhat similar to your story.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild story. There's a big element of it that will never go. Like, you just carry it. But it's a tough one to talk about, that one, because it's just kind of partly management, but partly like, would it have been? It would have been a lot different had Lucchi probably treated the incident a lot different. It would have been very easily for him to, hold a grudge against me. Just saying, you almost took my life away from my family, and you stuffed up. He easily could have done that, very easily. So, I think our relationship's been a big part of it. But it's just something I've continued to work on. And it's just about that, trying to maintain that appreciation for life and time, and I kind of get exposed to that a lot with my job as a paramedic. None of the elderly people sit in the back of the ambulance and say they wish they worked more. Like, it's all about time is the commodity we never get back. So it's all about trying to embrace it now. Like, I've learned a lot from Lucchi, I've learned a lot from the incident, and I've learned a lot from myself. Like, you get a lot of self-growth if you kind of go through these emotions. You've like really delved into the depths of what your mind is capable of when you're down in that horrible place. So, but for me, it was all about the way I was able to overcome this depression. It was all about embracing it. It wasn't about hiding from it or trying to push it back into, a memory part of my brain that I wouldn't access anymore. It was just about embracing it and honoring it and showing it respect, which is how I kind of moved forward, so to speak, and got on with my life. A lot of good things happened since then. I'm in a beautiful relationship with my wife. She fell pregnant probably 3 or 4 months after I'd kind of come out of that 6 month of depression with my little boy, and that's just a whole new chapter on life, having kids. So a lot of things to live for these days.
Is it a process of letting go, Ben? Letting go of that moment and all the feelings that you've held afterwards? Is that the right word for it, or how do you look at it these days?
Yeah, I suppose in a way it's about, not hanging on to it. Like, it'll be a continuous thing, I think, especially, adversity comes in all different fashions, and I've still got more to come in life. It's all not about highs. So obviously going through those lower points in life, challenges in other areas, you kind of revisit some of these emotions, and they're still there, but for me, it's not. I suppose you are, in a sense, letting go, because you're not trying to, grasp hold of it like that constant thought that you stuffed up. but just honoring, you know, the fact that we're human and mistakes happen in all shapes and forms. And the one I made that day was horrible, but you know, it was a very unfortunate event, but the luck part of it was that Lucci survived. I hope he doesn't have any deficits from it.
Nothing here, mate.
You know,
a little twitch.
Yeah, I've still got this leg that has a bit of grief to it. Like, it definitely doesn't work as well as it does, but it's just given me a different appreciation for other aspects of life. You know, not always is about being the top performer of surfing or being as best I could at skydiving or base jumping or whatever it is. You know, it really taught me to just embrace now and to have fun in the moment, as opposed to just chasing that dragon of being good or being better than what I was 30 seconds ago, which was this, constant drive I've had in life. So I guess I had that new, lease of trying to find happiness in all forms rather than a sporting achievement.
And you talk about that embarrassment element, and that seems like that was fundamental to your experience of it and saying how embarrassing it was. But and you think about it, it's you who's embarrassed, isn't it? Like, and this is an extreme example, but when we're holding embarrassment as men, often it's us who are embarrassed. It's not necessarily people around us. There wouldn't have been anyone in this situation, Ben, who was embarrassed about you. You know, it was you judging yourself so harshly and having this really high standard that you hold yourself to, as many men do, and not living up to it and not living up to that identity that you had set in stone before then, and then failing by your own standards and judging yourself so harshly on that for one mistake. You know, that's you doing it to yourself, tormenting yourself doing that. And I think a lot of hold on to those feelings and feel like we have to bear the weight of those feelings. But really, if you look at it, it's you putting yourself through that. And that's a difficult thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I suppose you don't realize you have an identity or you hold yourself to a certain standard until you drop that, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hang on a minute, that's not me. What's going on,
My identity's been elevated now. I'm the guy with the cool story. Being nearly knocked out and fell out of the sky. So, I just got a cool story to tell at the pub out of it, But no, like, in all seriousness, look, I've kind of experienced this a few times before. I've been an athlete in a few different sports as well, and you kind of do, especially, being a fighter as well. Like, you have this ego or this kind of identity that you think you are, and just even growing up as a man. Like, I grew up in a pretty violent, upbringing, domestic violence, violence that I was creating because of issues that I had, and I thought that's who I was. And as I got older and kind of seeked help about it, I realized that wasn't who I was. That was an identity that I'd labeled on myself, and that I kind of got me through school as the guy who could fight and all this stuff. And I thought that's the man I was, and it was just the total opposite. I'm not this big, tough, angry guy. I'm this lovable teddy bear. So, soft guy. But it is, you strap this identity to yourself, and it is hard to strip it away and actually be vulnerable and accept yourself for who you really are deep down inside. And unfortunately, a lot of men don't get to do that or never experience knowing themselves. And and unfortunately, it does take sometimes incidents like this, like a traumatic incident or whatever it is, going to see a counsellor or psychedelics, whatever unlocks that and lets you realize who you are. And, it's a very powerful thing. And I wish everyone got to, live life and experience who they truly are, not who they think they are, or who think people see them, or what their sport creates as their identity, who they truly are inside. And, from this incident and from a lot of things that happened to me in my life, I truly know who I am deep down inside.
I like the way you talked about toughness in the end of the documentary, and that what tough is, or what real strength is being able to be honest with the people around you about how you're going and face that and admit that to that yourself and admit that you can't do it on your own. And that seems like that's become stronger part of your own personal culture after this event, and that you're able to lead by example in that way. And I think that's so important. That's really what we're pushing for, is for men to be able to be brave enough to connect authentically like that. Because the fact is, we're all going through something, or will be at some point and continuously throughout our lives. And it's just some are able to face up to it and talk about it and share it, and many aren't.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the, like, after the documentary, after the premiere, I had a guy come up to me, and he was just like, you know, he was about my age, you know, the mid-40s, whatever. And he goes, mate, I just want to let you know I'm going through a divorce at the moment. I've got a 15-year-old son who's seen me crying and seen me at the lowest of my life, and he's lost the respect for me as a man, because he's like, you know, harden up, Dad, or what are you crying for? And what have you been emotional for? And he brought his son to the documentary, and when him and his son walked out of the documentary, he turned to his dad and said, Dad, I'm sorry. You know, I understand it's okay for a man to do this. And obviously he got that from watching. Most young men see base jumpers or skydivers or fighters, and they're like, wow, how tough is that guy? You know, they're superheroes, you know. And he just watched an hour of me and Benny crying on film, and, you know, bearing our souls on film, you know, and he's come out of it and it changed this kid's life, you know, and the relationship with his dad now. He said, I forgive you, Dad. I'm sorry, you know, I understand. Yeah, it was pretty beautiful to see that.
Yeah, and that is the kind of impact that you're chasing.
Yeah, 100%. That's it. You know, if that happens to one person, or, you know, it'd be amazing if we could get this out to many more people, get this story out. Doing podcasts like this is another way, you know, we get our story out, which, you know, we appreciate you for getting us on, and, trying to get our message out there for us.
And Ben, how's your rehab going? Are you still skydiving regularly? What's life like at the moment?
I still dabble in the rehab. I think it's just something I'll do for the rest of my life. I am pretty restricted with my knee. It does have some probably permanent damage. But, you know, like, I'm back to riding a shortboard in the surf. I went back to skydiving for a while. I think I did another 60 odd jumps post the accident. But I kind of stopped. I did stop base jumping when my wife got pregnant with my son, and that was something I did always say. I said once, if I decided to have kids, I probably would quit base jumping. I've just had a few friends pass away on the sport and leave young kids alone, you know, just with their mum. So that was just a personal choice. There's nothing wrong. I've also got a lot of friends that continue jumping with young kids, and they're very successful with it. And maybe it's something I can pick up again down the track when he gets a bit older. But I think skydiving, it was just, these days it's pretty timely and expensive. And now I'm not traveling around and coaching or anything like that. It's just a hobby. And a lot of it towards the end there was just kind of staying current with flying constantly and using the wingsuits, so that I could go over to Europe for a couple of months a year and indulge in the base jumping and you know, the big European cliffs. So I pretty much decided to give it away about 2 years ago. I haven't jumped since, and I miss base jumping. I probably think about base jumping every day, to be honest. I don't seem to think about skydiving that much, but I just see it as a different chapter, you know. Like, I'm really enjoying watching my son grow up. It feels like if you blink, you miss the sections. It's pretty cool. It's just that's the chapter at the moment, and I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying surfing. Got lots of friends up here on the Goldie that are surfers and stuff like that. So, and still doing stuff with the leg. Always going to try and get more out of it. And I think I'll probably have some more surgery in the next couple of years to, once again, try and get a bit more out of it, which is pretty locked up. But otherwise, trying to find happiness in all the little things, I guess, mate. You know, that was...
How do you stay on top of your mental health now?
Well, I still need to get outside and burn calories and stay active. That's the biggest thing for me. And like, you know, like Lucchi was saying before, like, probably the biggest person that notices that is our partners. You know, like, probably even before I do, like, I think I start grunting around the house or whatever, and Soph's like, go get your board, go for a surf, I'll see you in 2 hours. Or go and do something, just get out, get the skateboard and go down the skate park. Like, so, you know, I've always loved being active. I try not to use it as much as I probably did to, as a band-aid for other issues in life. But, I think sports or anything that kind of grasps your attention is a form of meditation. When you're out in the surf, you're not worried about the electricity bill or anything like that, or something that might have happened at work or whatever, the dickhead that's in the cubicle next to you. You're just focusing on that surfing or that appreciation for that moment. So, sports does have a lot to offer, and it's been clinically proven that it is really good for your mental health. Still enjoying the gym. But yeah, I think I kind of keep reiterating on like that. I think I talk about in the documentary, when I first started base jumping, but my very first wingsuit base jump, it's something probably only a few thousand people in the world have done. It's quite an achievement. I built up about 7 or 8 years of training for that day. Like the second my feet landed from that jump, I was thinking about, flying a bigger suit, flying faster, flying closer to the terrain. There was a very lack of, that was such an achievement. Let's just embrace that moment. And, Paddy actually latched onto this in the documentary. He was like, what's your proudest moment? And I was like, my son, yada, yada. And he's like, what's your biggest achievement in you? And I could not name a single thing because I just never had the time to kind of go, wow, man, you just achieved something. I was always goal driven. So, it was like I never achieved anything because the goalpost always moved inside my own head. So, this accident was all about, watching people in the surf. Quite often, it's not the best surfer that's having the most fun. Sometimes you come in from pumping Kira and there's a guy on the inside surfing a 9-foot foamy, standing up on knee-high whitewash, just fist pumping because they stood up on the surfboard. So, happiness is relative. So stop sweating the little things and just enjoy every moment for what it is. That's my biggest take on this whole journey, I think.
Well, that's some obvious personal development right there, mate. Well done.
That was awesome, Benny. Yeah, love it.
It's great that you've lived to tell the tale, guys, and it's a crazy tale, especially to watch it. It is, as I said at the start, it's a brilliant piece of filmmaking and it's so worth watching. And I love how you guys have used this traumatic event to be able to spread the message that you're spreading, and overarchingly about men needing to be able to be honest with themselves and people around them about how they're actually going, and take the pressure off themselves and have an awareness around what they're actually going through, and that sometimes the toughest battles can be the things that are least obvious, but they really count, and that we're all going to go through them at some point, and we need to be able to be there for ourselves and be there for other people. And anytime we can show people who are superhero-like, I mean, you guys literally fly through the air, and anytime we can show men who on the outside look like superheroes and like they might be superhuman and doing things that especially young men will look up to as being super cool and inspiring, and we can show that actually we're all human as well, and we all go through very human battles, and there's no escaping that, and that true strength is finding a way to navigate that and to share it, and we understand that and the strength that takes more and more as we get older. And you guys are setting a great example and doing it in a way which really deserves a lot of eyeballs. So come on, Netflix or Binge or whatever streaming service, they got to pick it up because everyone should see it.
Oh, awesome, man. Thank you. And that was so well said at the end there, man. You literally, that's the message we're trying to get across. So yeah, appreciate you giving us the platform to tell our story.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Young Blood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Young Blood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video, and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.